Just listen to them, Jensen. That's the old man up now on his feet, toasting Mrs. Serby.
So is it true what people say, that there's something going on between them?
God knows.
I mean, he was a bit of a lad in his day, wasn't he?
Maybe.
He's supposed to be giving this party for his son, so I'm told.
Yes, his son arrived home yesterday.
Well, I had no idea old Lerwill even had a son.
Oh, yes. He's got a son, all right, but he keeps himself well hidden up at Hoydle, at the sawmill. All the years I've been in service here, he never once been into town.
Hey, Pedersen, there's an old man here, and he's...
Oh, for God's sake, not now. What's he want? Good God, what are you doing here?
I really need to get into the office, Pedersen.
The office closed an hour ago, and anyway...
That's what they told me at the gates, old man, but Grodberg's still in there. Be a decent chap, Pedersen, and let me just slip in through here. I've gone in this way before.
Oh, all right. On you go. But make sure you leave by the proper way. We've got guests.
I know. Yes. Thanks, Pedersen, old man. You're a good friend. Thanks. Half-wit.
What? Does he work in the office too?
No. They farm out the odd copying job to him when it's urgent. Mind you, he used to be a somebody in his day, did old Ekdal.
Well, he's got that sort of look about him.
Yes, indeed. Used to be an officer in the army, would you believe?
You're joking. Him? An officer?
Honest to God. Then he went into the timber business or something. Supposed to have done the dirty on old Lerwill, at least, so they say. They were partners up at Hoydle at one time, you see. Oh, yes, I know old Ekdal, all right. Many's the glass of schnapps or beer we've had together, down at Mar Ericsson's.
He can't have money to throw around, surely.
Good God, Jensen. It's me that does the throwing around, you can believe that. No. I just think people should show a bit of respect for somebody that's come down in the world.
So he went bankrupt? Is that it?
No, worse than that. He went to jail. Hard labour.
Hard labour?
Or put in prison, anyhow. Shh. That's them getting up from the table now.
We'll take coffee in the music room, Pedersen.
Very good, Mrs. Serby.
Phew, that was some dinner, eh? Hard work getting through all that.
Well, it's amazing what you can manage in 3 hours if you put your mind to it.
But it's what comes after, my dear sir.
I believe they're serving coffee and liqueurs in the music room.
Bravo! And perhaps Mrs. Serby will play something for us.
As long as she doesn't play fast and loose with us.
Oh, I think not. Berta would never do that to her old friends.
I don't think anybody noticed, Gregors.
Noticed what?
You mean you didn't notice either?
What was there to notice?
We were 13 at table.
Really? 13 of us.
We're usually only 12. Come through here, gentlemen, please.
You shouldn't have invited me, Gregors.
What? I'm told this dinner party's in my honour, so why shouldn't I invite the only good friend I've got?
I don't think your father's too happy about it. I never come to the house any other time.
No, so I hear. Anyway, I had to see you and have a chat. I'm likely to be going away again soon. Well, here we are. 2 old schoolmates. We've drifted a long way apart, haven't we? We can't have seen each other for what, 16, 17 years now?
Is it that long?
It is indeed. So how are you doing these days? You're looking well. You've put on weight. One might even say you've got stout.
Well, you'd hardly call it stout.
but I dare say I look a bit more of a man than I did in those days.
Yes, you do. Well, outwardly, you don't seem to have suffered much.
But inwardly, Gregors, in here, it's a different story, believe me. I mean, you know all the terrible things that have happened to us since we last met?
So how is your father getting along now?
Let's not talk about it, my dear friend. My poor unfortunate father has to live with us these days, of course. There's nobody else in the world he can turn to. Actually, I find the whole business extremely painful. Let's change the subject. How have you been getting on up at the mill?
Oh, I've had a wonderful solitary life. It's given me a chance to think about all sorts of things. Come over here. Let's make ourselves comfortable.
I must thank you all the same, Gregors, for inviting me to your father's dinner party. I now know you no longer hold anything against me.
Why should you think I held anything against you?
For the first few years, yes, you did.
What first few years?
After our great misfortune. It was only natural that you should. I mean, your own father came within a hair's breadth of being dragged into it, to the whole dreadful affair.
And I was supposed to hold that against you? Whatever gave you that idea?
You did, Gregors, I know you did. Your father told me himself.
My father? Did he now? And was that the reason I never heard from you again? Not a single word?
Yes.
Not even when you went off to become a photographer?
Your father said I'd be better not writing to you. Not about anything.
No, I suppose not. Maybe he was right. Anyway, tell me, Hjalmar, are you finding things a little easier now?
Yes, I think so, more or less. I can't complain. It was all very strange for me at first, as you can imagine. I had to cope with a completely different set of circumstances. Then again, everything else was different too. My father's terrible misfortune, the shame and the disgrace. Gregors.
Yes, indeed. Quite.
I couldn't possibly think of staying on at university. We hadn't a penny to spare. Just the opposite. We were deeply in debt. Mostly to your father, I believe. Anyway, I thought it best to make a clean break. Get right away from the old life. All my old ties. Actually, it was your father who advised me to do that. And since he'd gone out of his way to help...
My father did?
Yes. Surely you know that. I mean, where would I have got the money to learn photography and set myself up in a studio? It costs a fair bit, you know.
And my father paid for all that?
Yes, my dear friend, didn't you know? I understood he'd written and told you all about it.
Not a word that it was him, no. He must have forgotten. Well, we've never written each other anything but business letters. So it was my father, was it?
Certainly was. He didn't want anybody to know about it, but it was him. And it was thanks to him, too, that I was able to get married. Or is it possible you don't know anything about that either?
No, indeed I don't. Well, my dear Hjalmar, you've no idea how pleased I am to hear all this. But a little troubled, too. Perhaps I've been doing my father an injustice over certain things. I mean, this does show a kind heart, don't you think? It's almost as if he had a conscience.
A conscience?
Well, whatever you want to call it. No, I can't tell you how delighted I am to hear this about my father. So you're a married man, Hjalmar? That's more than I ever expect to be. I hope you're finding married life to your liking.
Yes, I certainly am. She's as good and capable a wife as any man could wish for. And she's not entirely lacking in culture.
No, I'm sure she isn't.
Yes, life itself is a great teacher, you see. And the fact that she's around me every day, Then again, we have one or two quite intelligent people who visit us pretty regularly. You'd hardly know Gina now, I do assure you.
Gina?
Yes, my dear friend. She was called Gina, don't you remember?
Who was called Gina? I haven't a clue what you're talking...
She was in service here for a while. Surely you remember.
You mean Gina Hansen?
Yes, Gina Hansen, of course.
Who looked after the house for us that last year when my mother was ill?
That's right, yes. My dear Gregors, I know for certain your father wrote and told you I was married.
Yes, he did, as a matter of fact, but not that you'd... Wait a minute. Maybe he did mention it. Now I come to think of it. But my father always writes such short letters. Listen, Hjalmar. Tell me, this is quite funny, actually. How did you happen to meet Gina? I mean, your wife.
Oh, there's nothing to tell. Gina didn't stay all that long in the house here. Everything was at 6s and 7s with your mother's illness and so on. Gina couldn't put up with it, so she left. That was the year before your mother died. Or maybe it was the same year.
It was the same year. I was up at the mill at the time. So, after that...
Well, Gina went back home to her mother, Mrs. Hansen, an extremely capable, hard-working woman who kept a little cafe. She had a room to let too, a very nice, comfortable room.
And I dare say you were fortunate enough to get it.
Yes. As a matter of fact, it was your father that put me onto it. And that's where I really got to know Gina, you see.
And you eventually became engaged.
Yes. Young people get attached to each other very easily, you know.
Tell me this. After your engagement, was that when my father got you to... I mean, was that when you decided to take up photography?
Yes, it was. I was anxious to settle down, and the sooner the better. And your father and I both thought the idea of photography was the best solution. Gina felt the same way. Besides, there was another reason, you see. It just so happened that Gina had been taking lessons in retouching.
So it all worked out wonderfully well.
Yes, it did, didn't it? Don't you agree? Everything worked out wonderfully well.
Yes, I must admit it did. My father's been like a kind of divine providence for you.